let's talk about romance in gaming. So like every other form of media, many games feature some element of romance. This can exist through pre-existing narratives like Mario and Peach, or through player-made decisions in games like The Sims. But what makes a great gaming romance? Hell, what is the greatest video game romance? Obviously, this varies from person to person and is based off a number of factors like personal preference, game type, etc. So to add some semblance of a counterpoint here, I've actually invited another random gamer, AJ, to weigh in with his thoughts.
I'm really excited to be talking to you about romance in video games and characters in some of the games that I love. I can't wait to dig into some of these character moments and these relationships.
So get ready to hear a couple of nerds talk about their video game waifus. For me, the best video gaming romance that I've ever come across, and the one that stuck with me for years, is the one between your character and Jack from my favorite video game series, Mass Effect. In this story-driven action space drama, you control Commander Shepard on a quest to save the universe from imminent destruction. Between saving the universe, you do get time to talk to your crew, learn about who they are, uncover their past, and form deeper bonds with them. Jack is a character you meet in the second game as you're recruiting a crew to help you with your mission, and right off the bat, she makes one hell of an impression. She is introduced as this feared badass, this hardened criminal before you even get to meet her, and when you do, wow. Jack is instantly interesting. She is brimming with character, and you can tell that she has an extremely colorful background that just demands to be explored. Obviously, no surprise, Jack is a bit of a loner and takes to isolating herself from the rest of the crew. Getting to know her takes some actual work. You don't have to be all Mr. Nice Guy about it, and in fact, if you are, she'll probably hate you for it. But you do need to show some compassion, some attentiveness to her, and then she'll slowly open up to you about her history.
You're not really interested unless it affects you. I've been through all this shit before.
I could be genuine. You have no way of knowing.
I have eyes and I have history. You'll back off as soon as you realize you're not the first, and I'm immune to your help.
Everything about Jack tells a story, from her brazen attitude, to her head-to-toe tattoos, to her clothing choices. These are layers. These are layers that she puts on. They're defense mechanisms for her to cope. And if you look closely at her tattoos, you'll see the scars, the lengthy ones that cover her entire body. You'll see the real Jack is someone who has led a life filled with pain without anyone there to be an anchor for her. Jack's history, by the way, is heartbreaking, but it never goes so far as to being just 100% sadness, something that's so extreme that it makes her character completely unbelievable and makes it impossible for you to empathize with. You discovered as a kid that she was experimented on in a lab in order to make her stronger. After she escaped, she led a life of chaos, one running with gangs, using drugs, and even joining a cult. Slowly, she'll open up to you about her relationships, stating how they usually amount to people using her for her powers, or people she cared about actually getting hurt and dying, which is why she tends to put most people at a distance. Due to her history, she's instantly mistrustful of anyone trying to get to know her. In fact, after a few conversations, she'll ask you if this is all just about sex.
Wait, my turn with the questions. People usually walk by now. Why are you really asking all these things? Are you eyeing me up? Because if this is just about sex, maybe you should just fucking say so.
And you can actually just say yes and have sex right then and there. But if you do, the opportunity to form a real relationship with her vanishes. I like that the developers gave the player the option. If they want to have sex with Jack early on, they can. But any hope of a real relationship is now broken because Jack no longer trusts you. Because for her, you're just another person who wants to use her. As your relationship evolves between the second and third Mass Effect games, so does Jack as a person. She goes from figuring out who she is to becoming who she wants to be. While still an incredible badass, Jack is now training others, other kids just like her, without obviously all the experimentation. And although in the third game your interactions with Jack are few and far between, this is actually part of the reason that this romance works so well for me, because it feels real. This isn't just you, the protagonist, and some character waiting at home or waiting at the base for you to come home and talk with them between missions. These are two people with their own fully developed lives and goals. Even at the end of the game, when the Earth is making its final stand, Jack isn't waiting at base for you. She's not waiting at your side for you to give her some orders to come with you. She's off leading her own team on the front lines. Finding time for each other between the crazy events of the world makes this real. Jack had a past, a crazy past, before you ever came along, and continues to have a life of her own even with you around. She doesn't care that you're the savior of the universe. That doesn't matter, and that never mattered. What matters to Jack is that you took the time to get to know her as a person, to give her someone to trust and to listen to when she needed it the most. This is a relationship that feels real. It never feels like, oh, I'm nothing without you, and then, oh, they lived happily ever after. No, it's two people meeting each other and improving off of each other. Jack helps Shepard, your character, become a little less of a stick in the mud and a more adventurous person. And in return, Shepard becomes someone that Jack can open up to. This, combined with some deeply touching moments, like the moment where Jack gives you a tattoo.
Good enough, so that if you're ever hurt, barely breathing, lying under a pile of rubble at the ass end of this war...
Hey. You worry too much.
Makes this romance the best one I've ever seen. Okay, so enough of me gushing about Mass Effect. AJ, what's your favorite video game romance?
I can answer that question for the same reason I would say The Witcher 3 is one of my favorite role-playing games of all time. It's that the world and the characters are so deeply developed that you almost immediately feel a deep connection to everything that's going on. You feel like your choices matter and that the decisions you make are actively shaping the world around you. One of those key decisions is who Geralt should end up with. Making that a decision makes you feel so much more connected to whichever relationship you choose. The Witcher 3 is a story of a fantasy world burdened by monsters around every corner, and Geralt of Rivia, a monster slayer who takes on contracts to fight these forces. It's also a story of Yennefer of Vengerberg, a powerful sorceress who is entwined in Geralt's life and helping him to pursue his long-lost daughter, Ciri. The Witcher 3 was really my first experience with Yen, and I remember through my first encounters with her thinking, man, this woman is extremely unpleasant.
The Wild Hunt. What could it want from Ciri?
I've no clue, Geralt. Might have written them to ask, but I don't have their address. I know as much as you do. It must be about her blood. Her gift.
She treats Geralt poorly. She is clearly keeping things from him and pursuing her own agenda, but obviously that agenda aligns with Geralt to the degree that they both want to save Ciri. So you have to play with her, you have to get to know her a bit more, and through that I actually realized that these perceived inequalities in their relationship and the way that they talk to each other and treat each other is not just black and white. They have a very complicated dynamic, and part of it is that they don't know if they keep crossing paths because of a magic wish, or if it's fate, or if they truly do have something beyond that tying them together. And that creates a lot of distrust and a lot of fear between the two of them that really shines through in their interactions with each other. They want to work together, they want to be on the same side, but they can never be sure if the other is being completely honest with them. Now, of course, that's not the best foundation for a strong relationship, but clearly both of them care very much for Ciri, they care very much for each other, and they're trying to do everything that they can to make this relationship work. One of the best parts of The Witcher 3, in my opinion, is the side quest, The Last Wish, where Geralt and Yen work together to track down a djinn that would be able to reverse the wish that tied their fates together all these years. Through that, you get a lot of really fantastic character moments between the two of them, conversations about why they're doing this, whether they even want to know the answer to the question of if they're together for the right reasons or because magic is keeping them together.
So that's it. This is about my last wish?
You asked that djinn to bind us together forever. I want to ask this one to take that wish back.
Why would you want to do that?
To see what it's like without it. To see if we'll still matter to one another. or if we'll be like two strangers.
And ultimately, you're presented with the choice. You get to choose whether you still have feelings for Yen. Going back through all of the interactions that the two characters have throughout the game, many of which are also determined by choices that you make, it became clear to me that this relationship just makes sense. It's not just that they are tied together by fate, it's that they are two sides of the same coin. Geralt and Yen both are seen by the outside world as rough and scary and like they don't belong in the natural world. That deep similarity is what makes their relationship so interesting. They have different boundaries, they have different limits of what they're willing to do to accomplish their goals, and they have very different goals, but knowing that the other will always understand, no matter how visceral or dangerous or ill thought out their strategies are, the other will recognize that it is for the greater good, and they will help in any way that they can to ensure that everyone comes away unscathed and stronger for it. That, to me, is a very strong relationship. It is one built on a mutual respect and a mutual admiration for the other person. Now, both of these characters being such fully developed individuals is what makes their romance so enticing. They love each other and they want to be together and they want to help each other, but that doesn't mean that they are hanging off of each other at all times. When Geralt is off slaying monsters or saving the realm, Yen isn't sitting at home in Kaer Morhen waiting for him to come back. She is off influencing emperors and kings. She is finding ways to reverse her infertility. She is finding ways to bring the Lodge of Sorceresses back together. Both of them have these rich, full lives outside of each other that only serve to further paint their picture of their life together. And that is what's most interesting to me. That relationship is one of story. It's one that bards in the world have written ballads about.
These scars long have yearned for your tender caress, to bind our fortunes. Damn what the stars are.
It is something that almost anyone can identify with in some way or another. I feel that Geralt and Yen's relationship is more real, more passionate, and more personal than any other that I've seen in video games. And for that reason, I would say that The Witcher 3 does game romance better than anyone else.
Right, so based on what we've both said, it sounds like a great video game romance is one that shares a lot of similarities with what you would hope to find in the real world. It's one that involves fully realized people with their own lives, history, and goals that help each other out and improve by being together. And not only that, these well-developed characters have a bond that progresses naturally over the course of the game in a way that furthers the story itself. As a player, this really helps you get more invested in the story and helps create these moments that stay with you long after the game is over, as you drift back into reality and hope that maybe one day you'll run into your own sharp-witted witch or rage-filled telekinetic. Or maybe not. Anyways, AJ, thank you so much for joining me today. Any last thoughts?
Thanks so much for listening to me talk about The Witcher 3. It's a game that I love a lot, and I especially appreciate the romance in it. Clearly, we have some very strong opinions about these romances and maybe some questionable taste in romantic partners, but hopefully you had fun listening to this, because I certainly enjoyed talking to you about it.
And as always, thanks for letting us talk gaming to you today.